Yo, it's your boy AO, host of Lakers for Life Live, a channel for fans, by fans. And with all my lives, if you like it or hate it, just drop a comment and debate it. I know y'all were watching that Knicks game, that Knicks Lakers game, and I got to come on the live because I'm frustrated. I'm frustrated because you come off a Wizards game where you beat the bricks off of them as expected. And you hope that momentum carries into a signature game, a marquee game. The Knicks are second in the East. We know how we've done against good teams. And this is an opportunity to finally take that step, build off the momentum. You've had a good road trip so far, and go get a big W. Go get a big W against a good team. Dispel all those games from before where we've gotten blown out, lost by double digits, and go get a W. And I thought we had a good first half. We'll break it all down. But in the second half, we go off the rails again. We absolutely go off the rails again. And it turns out to be a 12-point loss. 12-point loss. But if you're new to the show, welcome. Make sure you hit that like button, subscribe to me on YouTube, and drop your comments, drop your frustrations, your questions. I'll make sure I get to them live or at the Q&A at the end. I want to hear from y'all. And again, like it or hate it, drop a comment and debate it. Let's keep that show going. But let's start out by zooming out real quick. So we are 4-2 entering into this game. A chance to go 5-2 if you get the win, and then you got Brooklyn next, 6-2. Good road trip, solid road trip. And my expectation was 5-3. That was my goal. So we're on track for that. But here's what bugs me right now with tonight's game and then just how this road trip's gone, right? You come out the gates beating Denver, and they've been a good team even without Jokic, which I will chalk up to a good win, right? You beat Denver, Jamal Murray, all-star selection for the first time. Like, he's been playing well, Denver's been playing well, and you go out and get a W to kick off this road trip. Awesome. Good shit, right? And then you slowly see a trend. And what's that trend on this road trip? You lose to the Clippers. We're getting blown out at one point, right? Cut the deficit down, lose by 8. Okay, that's one game. The Clippers have been the number one team in the league for about a month now. Okay, I'll take that, right? Then you get a couple games, you get you get some momentum. You drop the Cleveland Cavaliers game, another good team that's above 500. You drop it by 30 points. Just a game you're going to flush down the toilet. Okay, let's move that one to the side. Now you get to this marquee game after a huge win against the Wizards where we were front running. Everything was good. We were getting anything we wanted, hitting from all cylinders, put up 140 points, huge point margin. You get to the Knicks game. It's MSG, national TV game, basketball night in America on NBC. You have a good half, but then you lose by double digits again to the Knicks, 12 points. We got outscored by 16 in the second half and only scored 44 in the second half. And you blow this game too. So what is that? 3 losses on this road trip to all of the good teams. All of the good teams on the road trip. I would have wanted one of those 3 to go 5-3 on the road trip. We're going to go hopefully 5-3 after beating Brooklyn. But another loss to a good team. And before we get into the kind of game, and then we'll get into some trade deadline stuff and my takes on Rob and what we're planning to do. But the Lakers have lacked signature wins against good teams. We haven't beat a good team in a while. And if you disagree, let me know. But it's these lack of signature wins that's stopping us from getting over the hump and getting talked about seriously, in my opinion, right? We're 29-19. That's a good record. 10 games over 500, could possibly get to 11 games over 500 against Brooklyn. But there's a dark cloud hanging over the Lakers. And what that is when it comes time to play good teams, this team completely falters. Completely falters. And this game did not help that narrative, right? You can go ahead and front run against the Wizards, but when it comes to a good team, we can't get it done. And that's just the mediocrity. If you've been watching my shows, watching the game recap hitters, that's just a sign of mediocrity. When your SRS or your net rating adjusted by strength of schedule is a negative, it's going to drop even more after this game. Last I checked, it was a -1. Your 29-19 team with a -1 SRS. That says a lot. You're taking care of bad teams, but you're winning, but you're not handling business the way you're supposed to. And a lot of that is these games where we're supposed to rise to the occasion, step up, capitalize on the momentum and keep it going. And we just completely break that momentum each time. Another bad team. And then it's just been a repeated cycle this season. And I get it. AR's been out. We'll get into why we need him desperately in the game recap. I was a bit disappointed, and obviously a calf strain is not something that you sneeze at. It's a serious injury, so I can understand why we're being cautious, and for the end of season push, we need to be cautious. But I was really hoping, the All-Star reserve selections came out, Austin would play, light it up in MSG, and, provide us with that scoring punch we're desperately lacking right now. And it just didn't happen. Maybe he comes back Tuesday, maybe a better game to ramp up. But, not having him has been a huge hole in for this team, especially against the good teams, to be able to sustain offensively when you're not a great defensive team, right? We've seen that, but we've done just enough in some games where if you're scoring at an elite level, it can make up for that lack of D or just D in bursts across the game. That didn't happen today, but I guess it did happen to a degree. So let's break it down, right? The Lakers lose 100 to 112. So already the first sign, barely cracked 100 points. Insane. You're not going to win games scoring 100 points. It doesn't work like that these days, right? And the Knicks only scored 112, despite the magnet ball that they had from three. They only scored 112. So if you look at the final score, this was a winnable game. And we break it down. Luka Doncic, 30 points, 15 rebounds, 8 assists, 10 for 23 from the field. Not the most efficient, 5 for 14 from three. A lot of shot chucking at the end of the game, and we'll get into that. Only 3 turnovers on the night. He was he's been the scoring output for us. But LeBron James, 22 points, 5 rebounds, 6 assists, 1 steal. He was 9 for 15, super efficient, 2 for 6 from three. Missed some free throws. Down the stretch that I think could have closed the gap. But, for the most part, solid game too. And, Luka, I thought was, finding his teammates early on in the game. DeAndre Ayton, 13 points, 5 rebounds, 6 for 6 from the field. Started off the game great. I think Luka set him up on some great passes. You see the fluidity. You saw that lob, pins, getting offensive rebounds. And DA was off to a strong start. And I really wanted to see that DA has played well. He came off a great game against the Wizards, against bad teams. Can he rise to the occasion and put up a good game against Mitchell Robinson, right? And when the game started, that first quarter from DA was strong. I was like, okay, if DA's come into play, I think we can gut this out. And for the most part in that first half, we were gutting it out. But non-existent in the second half. Again, just a no-show. And, it was a lot of chaos on the offensive end and just the fact of not hitting shots. But I I hated to see DA completely shy away from the game in the second half when he started off so strong. I mean, Cat got to the offensive rebounds all over the place in that second half. And it was a real game changer because not only are they hitting threes, but when you're missing shots, they're getting all the offensive rebounds and getting extra attempts. You're not going to be able to, make up the margin, right? Rounded out, Smart for the starting lineup. Smart 7 points, 2 for 9, 1 for 4 from three. Jake Laravia, 5 points, 2 rebounds, 2 assists, 1 for 6 from three. So 2 for 10 between the two of them. And it just goes back to the inability to have players that can just hit shots at volume. And outside of Rui, we don't really have anyone. And that was kind of the Achilles heel today. Jake had some really bad sequences in that third quarter where he was just missing wide open threes. No distress, no one even near him. And a couple of those go down, this game completely changes. His defense wasn't there. It was just a bad game from Jake Laravia. I think with Austin back, he's going to be the guy out of the starting lineup. I'm hoping we keep Smart in. I do like Rui off the bench. Smart in a lesser role offensively when Austin comes back, I think is a good fit. He's still a POA that we need. And I think if we can, put a leash on the offensive end with Smart, he's a good fit. Austin will make up that deficit. But just a poor showing from those two on the offensive side of the ball. I thought Marcus Smart was good defensively in stretches, which he always typically is, but just not having the ability to hit shots is what killed us tonight. I mean, to round out the bench, what I thought was really interesting, I don't really do stat of the nights, and plus minus isn't my normal favorite stat, but all of the starters had a negative plus minus. The bench, Rui ended up with the -1. He was a plus for a good portion of his minutes. All of the bench was a plus in the plus minus. And I don't necessarily know what to take away from that, except that staggered lineups were working a little bit better maybe than the starting lineup. But I thought that's an interesting stat. All of them off the bench were positive, but our starters were deep, deep negative. Marcus Smart, -19, Laravia, -19, LeBron James, -17. So if y'all have any takes on that specific kind of outlook on the game, I thought that was really interesting. But to round out the bench, I mean, Gabe, out of all people, and I can't stand Gabe, but he was 2 for 4 from three. Rui, another player, 1 for 5 from three. So between Laravia, Smart, Rui, you are 3 for 15 from threes, 20%. And the inconsistency from Laravia and Smart makes sense, but Rui going 1 for 5. He's missing some threes down the stretch. I thought he started off the game well. He finished with 11 points, 5 for 11 overall. So if you look at it, he went 4 for 6 from two. I thought he was efficient from two, but just couldn't hit shots in the second half. Jared Vanderbilt was out there. We saw a lot of his offensive deficiencies. I still think he was good defensively. But again, when you don't have shot making on this roster, it's very tough to gut out these wins and gut out these games. I mean, if you look at the Knicks, God, OG Anunoby killed us today. And it wasn't just the three balls. He went 4 for 8 from three. He was getting boards, getting dunks. What killed us in that third quarter was there were 2 turnovers. Luka had one at midcourt, and then we fumbled the ball, led to 2 breakaway dunks for the Knicks. This was after we came back from the Knicks run. I think we were down 7. We came back, got back in the game, which I thought was great. Okay, we have some life. We're fighting. When those 2 turnovers happened and the Knicks got 2 breakaway dunks, that's when the game got loose and everything fell off the rails. I mean, he had 25. Josh Hart had 20. Cat with 13 rebounds. I'm reading them, 5 of them offensive rebounds. Mikal was only at 10 points. I mean, Jalen Brunson didn't score. I mean, we held Cat and Jalen Brunson to only 23 points. Jalen had 13 assists, though, because a lot of those threes Landry Shamet off the bench, 23 points. He knocked down 6 threes, 6 for 10. Magnet ball. Killed us at the end of the game. Josh Hart, I thought had some big threes. He went 3 for 4 from three, right? Tyler Kolek, he went 2 for 6 from three, but he had a stretch where he was playing well. So, I mean, like, you look at the game summary, and the Knicks went 18 for 42 from three. They made 6 more threes than us, 43% overall. We only shot 29%. That's 18-point swing right there with 7 missed free throws on top of it. That's 25 points in a 12-point game. Just from that. I mean, we always talk about, like, I think in these losses, oh, they were just hot. The team was hot. They were shooting. They were hot from three, but it seems to be a consistent theme in all of these games against good teams. They just go hot from three. They kill us from three. And I thought we did get some stops down the stretch, but we couldn't convert. And when you can't hit open shots, you can't hit open threes, it makes the game very difficult. The offense starts to become stagnant. It starts to become more predictable. Teams are cheating off players, daring them to shoot threes. And then you get into a situation where Luka and LeBron have to do what they have to do to carry the load. And it just turns into shot chucking, stagnant ISOs, and that's it. You know what I mean? And that was the story of the game. We had some huge scoring droughts in that second half. And that's where, Austin Reeves is really missed. That's 25 points per game right now. That's missing from the team for the past 20 games. And granted, I get it. Luka, LeBron, and Austin don't have the greatest record. They're 5-3 in the 8 games that they have played together. But we desperately needed Austin today. And we have needed Austin because we just don't have the consistency in scoring across our role players. We don't have that shooter that can hit threes at a high clip and at a high volume. I mean, Rui's our closest person. We have to play Jake LaRavian smart because they bring an aspect of defense that we don't necessarily have in the starting lineup, but they are streaky shooters, right? And we'll get into roster construction and what I think about the trade deadline and Rob and all of that towards the end. But Austin was desperately needed. We need him to bring variation on the offensive end so that Luka's not just settling for ISOs or shot chucking threes. He had some deep ones where I was just like, really? That was the shot we needed? And I mean, I get it. Who else do you want to score the ball? It's not Luka. But again, it gets back to when we're not hitting shots, that predictability rises for team defenses. Austin kind of breaks that. He's a good catch and shoot scorer. He can score at all 3 levels. The calf strain does concern me with Austin. You don't want to rush him back. But man, after the Brooklyn game, our schedule gets brutal. And we're going to need everything possible because we're 6th right now. The Suns lost. But you're dangerously away from the play-in. And I don't want to get into that mix again. But it was tough today. I mean, when you go 3-4 minutes in a quarter where you can't score the ball, you can't do anything. When you're staggering LeBron and Luka, it's that much more scoring that's left off the table when both of them are not playing together. And then you have streaky role players. Austin, we've said it time and time again on these shows, is the connector. Not the starting lineup needs work and synergy with the trio, but when we start to stagger the lineups, he can play with Luka. He can play with LeBron. He can push the pace and get into transition with LeBron. He can play off ball and be a catch and shoot threat for Luka. So very important. We need Austin back, and he can't come soon enough, especially down this stretch. I mean, to finish off, the Knicks had 16 fast break points. A lot of those came off the turnovers. Points off turnover battle, 19-10. We didn't turn over the ball much this game. I think we finished with 10 turnovers on the night. Let me check. Yeah, 10 turnovers on the night. But they had 19 points off of those 10 turnovers. That's almost 2 points per turnover. And it was a lot in the second half, which really broke the game open. And and that hurt. And again, they were offensive rebounding when they were missing. You saw Cat had 5. I thought DeAndre Ayton's activity towards the end of the game or the second half was just not good, especially on the boards. And the Lakers drop another game against a good team. We've been saying that all show. 29-19 on the year. Trade deadline is February 5th. And I am very worried. And I want to hear your thoughts. If you guys are in here for the first time, tap in with me. Don't be shy. I enjoy questions, takes, frustrations. Hit me with whatever on the chat. Get over on YouTube, drop the chat, and we'll talk about it. But I'm worried that Rob Pelinka is not going to be able to get something done this deadline. And granted, I know he pulled the Luka trade off last year. Before that, he pulled the DFS trade. Big moves. He moves in silence. So a lot of the rumors you're seeing on X, probably not true, especially if it's someone we're trying to get. If things start to blow up, it means that player is probably not in our purview. But, Dan Wakey reported that we're not trying to take on salary beyond this year to preserve our cap space. We're not trying to use the first round pick. And that really limits what you're trying to do, especially when you're trying to get specific types of players. And where I don't agree with, if this is true, how we're going about it, cap space isn't your solve. Even if you're not going to be able to pull the multiple moves we need to turn this year into a true contender, you need to pull a move to help you build for the next year with players that can stay on this roster, can build some continuity with Luka and AR, right? We know there's a question mark around LeBron, but you need to build. All of that's not going to come just because you have cap space. And we might get into a situation again where it's the 1+1s. Are we even going to get the targets we want with the cap space, the Kesslers, the Peyton Watsons? And if we don't get them and strike out again and we have to do this piecemeal team that isn't going to last, this is where you're going to get into issues. And we've been seeing it year after year after year of just having a piecemeal team. We traded for DFS. Wasn't a perfect player. We know he had limitations, but a good player to have on your roster from both a culture standpoint, from what he could bring defensively, even though he guards more fours, but it's a player you bring back to build that continuity. We know what relationship he had with Luka, and I get it. He's injured, and that could have played a factor into it, right? But the point is, these piecemeal, let's put a team together that isn't going to last years 2 and 3 isn't working anymore. Every player we signed is a 1+1. DeAndre Ayton got a player option. Marcus Smart got a player option. Jake LaRavia we signed for 2 years, right? So Marcus could opt out. DA could opt out. And I know we're not fans of DA all the time, and his motor and consistency are an issue, but it's not building a team for continuity, right? And I'm worried that Rob Pelinka doesn't have the chops to have a vision, understand what's going on around the league, and build a team in accordance to that, especially in accordance with Luka's skill set. That's a huge overhaul that you need to build the right team around Luka. And we have no player on this roster right now which is a clean fit, which is even more scary. So you're talking about 20% of your team to 30% is already dead weight. And then the players you have 1 through 10 in your rotation aren't perfect fits next to your cornerstone player, right? And, what worried me, and again, these are just rumors, but we were interested in DeAndre Hunter. I'm glad that trade didn't go through. He's just Rui 2.0. In fact, he's not even as good a shooter as Rui, and his defensive metrics aren't what they are cracked up to be, even though he might be better a bit defensively than Rui. But that was the player that we were rumored or linked to Keon Ellis ended up going in that deal, which I was a little bitter about because I do like Keon, especially for a replacement for Gabe. I think Keon is a good upside player with 3-and-D capability that just didn't have a good situation in Sacramento. But what I saw in that deal, which by the way did not make sense. I have boys that are Sacramento Kings fans and they were confused. But that aside, the Cavaliers, who are a second apron team, were able to get a POA guard that they desperately need right now and has upside, a chance to re-sign them back. They're a second apron team. They were able to clear cap space, make a move on the margin that helps their team. And, Dennis went in the deal. They took, a bad deal in exchange for the upside, but it's not like Hunter was, super pivotal piece to them. But the point to that is they made a marginal move that, for the time being could help improve them. We'll see if they do anything with Garland down the stretch, but these marginal moves help. And I just don't think Rob has the capability without overpaying to make a marginal move that makes sense. A move where it's a 8th, 9th, 10th man on a roster where he's not getting the opportunity, but could have an opportunity on the Lakers and could fit. That is something that I don't think, Rob can do. We got a comment here. Pelinka is on the clock. Has to make a trade. TikTok, we're not going to cuss, but MF, you got 4 days. Shay on the beat, what's up? Tap in, tap in. But no, it's true. He is on the clock. And it goes to the marginal moves. I think he's trying to gear up for this home run, Giannis or something of that sort, where we don't even really have the pieces to trade for a Giannis right now. We don't even have multiple picks. We have one. And if you're going to trade for Giannis, if you're not bringing in a third team, that's a lot of salary you have to get off the roster. And that's a huge shakeup again, right? You bring in the brand name player. So you're holding out for a home run that isn't necessarily even viable or has a high probability, right? You got to hit singles. You got to hit doubles. You got to make moves that people aren't seeing right now. And you add players that may not be brand name players, but fit really well with what we're trying to do around Luka and the gaps that we currently have. I got a comment on X that said, we need another player that may not just be a 3-and-D archetype, but someone that can actually score at all 3 levels and be a threat, in a Luka-centric offense. And I think 100% we need a player like that. But that's like the Trey Murphy types, right? That could be pie in the sky. And, maybe it's not the Trey Murphys. Maybe it's a Sadiq Bey that's chilling on the Pelicans, having a good year. The Pelicans are a tank team. Let's do something there. I think he'd fit in real well. He's a dog. And it's just another threat to have, either starting or off the bench. I mean, Quentin Grimes over there in Philadelphia, they're not going to be able to afford him. These moves on the margins, right? It just goes back to the philosophy with Rob, which I've preached on Hitters and other live shows if you've tapped in, of just, you need a GM that has a vision. And he had a team that he assembled in 2020 when we won the chip with a double big model, bigs that could protect the paint. Obviously, AD was playing, insane that year, but he surrounded those bigs in LeBron with a ton of 3-and-D guards and wings, right? You think about it. KCP, Danny Green, Avery Bradley, Rajon Rondo, Alex Caruso, tons of defense there, and the ability to hit the 3. You still had Kyle Kuzma, Markieff Morris, right? Your double bigs. He stumbled into a model that he has not been able to replicate any year after that. The next year, I thought the team was good, but then it went off the rails after that Russ trade, and he hasn't been able to recover, right? All the teams, the good teams right now, have that archetype, right? Athletic 3-and-D wings that can play defense, bigs, right? You think of OKC, you think of Detroit, you think of San Antonio, Denver, right? Like, Denver might be a bit of an offshoot just because they have Jokic and he's the best player in the world to me, but the other teams have this archetype and we've just shied away from it. We haven't been able to get a true two-way 3-and-D wing at all. The last one we had was Max Christie, and he rightfully went into that trade with Luka, which makes sense. He's our last player. And then you pair that with you understand what or don't understand what the league is doing. You're not able to mold your team into what's successful from an NBA standpoint. And then you don't have player development happening either. We've struck out on JHS, who was just a complete flop. Dalton Connect started off great. No player dev. Haven't been able to do anything with him out of our rotation. Someone that we're going to dump in a trade. That's 2 first-round picks, mid-first rounders, that we've completely botched. Completely botched. And what's the rest of the youth on the team? Thero is out for an extended period of time. Bronny James. Our two-way players don't really make sense. And I know Drew Timme has had good minutes, but we're not even playing him right now. Even with those good minutes. We got this dude, Chris Mignon, on the G League team, who's maybe the only archetype of a 3-and-D wing. He hasn't gotten any run. So you can't acquire the players that we need, and you're working from behind, and then you're not developing players on the bottom of our roster that could take a rotation spot in 1-2 years, has some promise. 2 very big equations to becoming a good team and sustaining and having longevity as a good team, right? And then you back yourself into a corner again. Another trade deadline where we need multiple trades. How many seasons have we gone through where we're just so hell-bent on getting trades done in the trade deadline? When a good team is just trying to make some light tweaks if they can to make that push. We're trying to bring in actual pillars to the roster at the trade deadline every year. And what happens in business? When you're negotiating with someone and they're backed into a corner and they need what you have, you're going to overprice that. It's not a Lakers tax. And sure, Rob may have some enemies, but if I'm negotiating with Rob and I know he needs wings, a better center, some POA defense, a 3-and-D shooter, I'm going to make sure I get everything I need in that trade. And it could be a Lakers tax. It's just negotiation. And we back ourselves into a corner every single season. And then it's always, well, if we don't want to take on multi-year contracts because we're trying to preserve cap space, or we're trying to make bigger deals with our 3 first-round picks. We've heard that narrative before. When D'Lo was on the roster, right? Oh, we're going to go use our picks to get, splash on this player, that player. Art Herrera, shout out to you, man. Thanks for tapping in. Who's realistic to get? Heard they won't take on salary for next year. That's why they turned down the Hunter trade. We just went over that. I appreciate you, man, the comment. Stay tapped in with me. Make sure you like the video and subscribe and, stay rocking with me. But there's a couple points to this, and we'll reiterate it again. Heard they won't take on salary for next year. And they turned down, and that's why they turned down the Hunter trade. Yes, that's what I was reading too. And there is a big emphasis on preserving the cap space. But what I'm hoping is how Rob is thinking about it is, I want to preserve the cap space, but if we can facilitate a deal that allows us to get better this year, and that player can stay on the roster and is a good fit for Luka next year, we can do some of that pre-agency now, right? Instead of rolling the dice and hoping that you're going to go get a Peyton Watson and Walker Kessler, who are both RFAs, by the way. Those are our primary targets, and they're restricted free agents. So that's already difficult as it is. It's already hard bringing in unrestricted free agents, but now they're restricted and teams can match, and those are your targets, makes it even more difficult. So I will say this, with the Hunter deal, because his contract was $25 million, next year, and it would have eaten into the cap. So that 50 or so, 55 million of cap space that we would have had would have been only about 25 to 30, maybe to go make a run at Peyton, Walker, whomever. But I will say, and I mentioned it early in the show, Art, that I didn't want to have that trade happen. And if it did happen, I would want draft compensation back. I would need some sweeteners in that deal because if we're gonna get the Cavs out of the second apron or less of a tax in that second apron, and we're giving them expiring deals, and this player is marginally better than Rui, if not, I mean, Rui's a better shooter, hands down. DeAndre might have a bit more of an archetype on the defensive end, but I'm not convinced he's that player that can be that legit starting three that we're looking for. So if you mix all those factors together, I'm not just going to trade Rui for DeAndre. Now if it was, and it was mentioned on other shows, if it was a Maxi Kleber and a Gabe Vincent with Connect, that changes the outlook. But from what I was reading with Dan Wiki, it was we were considering Rui for that deal. I would need more. I would want a 3-team with Keon coming back, or we would need a sweetener because Rob did position, and the Lakers have positioned that Rui, they are seeking a first round pick for Rui. And I think he's played well enough to merit, if not a first, multiple seconds, and making sure we get some type of compensation back if it is going to be a dump, right? So, but what concerns me to your comment though is while I didn't necessarily disagree with not doing the DeAndre Hunter trade because I'm not a big fan of DeAndre Hunter. I don't want it to be a hard rule for anything they're trying to do. Like we got Wiggins out there in Miami, and Miami is someone that wants to go get Giannis. They're trying to put together a package to make a run at Giannis. They have 2 first-round picks. They have a group of young players in Hawkes and Jovic. There's another European dude, last name starts with a J, pretty good. Kalel Ware, right? They got Tyler Hero to make up the salary. They're trying to put a deal together to make a run at Giannis. So I am okay with maybe sending out a first-round pick, unprotected, and Rui with our expirings to go bring a Wiggins, who I think would be a great fit next to Luka. And that's just my opinion. I think he's an actual two-way player that brings slashing capability, defense, can hit the 3 ball, and makes your offense that much more dynamic and brings more on defense, way more than Rui. He rebounds better than Rui. I think he'd be a good fit at the 3, even next to Austin Reeves and Luka, because he can play off ball. So that intrigues me. Now, Kalel Ware could be in the package for Giannis, perhaps, but our unprotected first-round pick that we would send out, I think, is pretty valuable. You go flip the first-round pick, and this is just me talking, not as someone that, I have a good idea of the cap, how it works, but, I'm not the guy. I'm a fan just like y'all. This is for fans, by fans, no sources here, but I mean, if you could facilitate a trade where you bring Wiggins back and, if it was just Wiggins, Rui, you wouldn't want to give a first-round pick because we are clearing up salary for the Miami Heat. But if the first-round pick does have to go, could a Kalel Ware be in that trade? He's a big that isn't really utilized by Spo. And if we send out Rui, send out the first-round pick, I would even send out the second-round pick. Maybe some pick swaps. I believe in Kalel Ware. And now we were to get a Kalel Ware and an Andrew Wiggins on this team, both players who I feel really fit well with Luka. I mean, Kalel Ware is popping threes. I don't know why Spo don't like him. If y'all know, drop your comments into the chat and let me know why. Spo doesn't like Kalel. I'm a fan. But the point of it is, if the trade evolves into something like that, where you're getting Kalel Ware and Wiggins, I would trade out our draft compensation. I would trade out some swaps. I would trade out Rui and our expirings. And then hopefully Miami can use those assets, the swaps, the second, the first, to add to their 2 picks, their swaps, and still have Hero, Hawkes, Jovic, their other young player that I mentioned, that Euro dude, whose last name starts with the J. That's a strong package for Giannis based on everything that's out there, right? It could compete maybe against a Warriors package. I would be interested in that. So, and we'd be taking on salary for next year, but I think it's well worth it. So if there's a player, Art, to your point, that yes, could be multi-years, but is a player that we see could play with Luka for multi-years, and a Wiggins has a 2-3 year window where I think he could be very good, and then we can figure out what to do with them later. Rob needs to be thinking in that way. Cap space is there, but if you can start your team building now, which is what you really should be doing, when's the last time you've seen a team in the NBA completely overhaul their roster with cap space and go out there and become a contender and win a chip? I mean, the last time we did that was us, 2020, right? We haven't been able to do it since. So just relying on cap space, I don't think is a way to build what we need to build. We need to be aggressive now, because what you don't want is you strike out on free agents next offseason, and now you're doing the 1+1 again. You're bringing back an Ayton or Smart or, a Rui. You have essentially the same team, but it's going to overturn again to have cap space in 2027. That's 2 gap years now. This year would be 1, and next year would be 1. And the biggest thing is we need to hold Rob accountable. This gap year philosophy, I hate. I hate gap year philosophies. You have Luka Doncic, who's a top 5 player in this league. When AR comes back, he's playing at an all-star level. You have LeBron James. In no way should this year be a gap year. We knew what we needed at the end of the offseason. Great pickups in DeAndre Ayton, from a value perspective at $8 million. We can have a debate on another show about Ayton. But you picked up Ayton, you picked up Smart, a good pickup, and you picked up LaRavia. But at the end of the offseason, Laker Nation, everyone that's on this chat, you tell me, at the end of the offseason, did you not feel, because I felt this way, okay, we had some good players that we brought in. We made up for losing DFS, but this team needs to make a trade to fill in gaps that we know we had. And that was at the wing. We were skeptical a little bit of the center spot with Jackson Hayes being the backup and Ayton having a question mark over him, even though he was probably good value. He still is good value, but he's not what we need in terms of a starting center long term. But there were always holes that we needed to fill. And that is the job, right? Like, that's the hard part of the job. Ayton came via Luka's agent. They share one. Luka reached out to Smart and recruited him. Austin and Jake LaRavia are boys. So, I don't like to only dish out the bad and not give out the good. But what I will say is, hey, hats off to Rob. If you influence that in any degree, great. We'll give you the credit. But that was the easy part of the job. The hard part has always been, how do you acquire those wings? How do you fill in the POA deficit that we have? We don't have a true two-way at the 3 spot. Our centers are, not all the way there. We're not confident that we can make a deep playoff run with these 2 centers, but maybe good for the regular season. You have expiring contracts. You have a few picks. This is the job. You need to go get it done. And we're 4 days away from the deadline. And to me, if you don't get anything done, Laker Nation can't take another gap year. It's an indictment on this dude. If he's thinking we're only preserving cap space, we want to trade and make a home run hit with 3 picks, he is not the GM. Good GMs that have vision don't build rosters this way. And again, we talked about it at the top of the show, his lack of being able to have player development. The Denver Nuggets have Peyton Watson sitting in the cut. And if they do match that salary, that's a big player that they developed. And they did that After they developed Christian Braun, who's their starting two. After KCP left, these players filled in rotation spots. And that's how good teams continue to stay good. OKC, their whole 15-man roster is players ready, next man up if one player leaves. Detroit, nothing but young players, right? We've missed that boat. And to say you're going to make it all up in an offseason, man, I'm not buying that. I'm not buying the BS Rob spits. I think he's backed into a corner, and I hope he makes me eat my words, and I'll eat him. I'll eat him if he pulls off a move that makes sense. Moves in silence like he does. But for what I've seen and how much he's backed himself into a corner, I think it's going to be very tough in all of these kind of parameters he's put on this season when there's only 2 more years of Luka, then he has a player option. And Art, to your next point, wasting Luka's prime is unacceptable. Hopefully Rob makes a trade by Thursday. I completely agree. Luka is entering his prime, 27 years old. We're about to turn 27. Top 5 player in the league, hands down. Y'all want to debate it? We can, but hands down. Top 5 player in this league. There should never be a gap year when you have a top 5 player in the league. You had an off season. You had time last year to come up with a plan. And you did some of the work in the offseason. This deadline is what counts. And if you can't get it done, I need you out. Mark Walter needs to throw the bag at a GM with a vision that has a structured approach, that builds a system, that brings in player development, a big scouting team. Because I will tell you this, scouting isn't just college players. Scouting isn't just European players that aren't in the league. You need a team that's scouting NBA personnel, that's looking deep into benches, that's scouring the G League to find those gems to put on 2 ways. Maybe one hits, gets a part of the rotation, in the year. Or you make that trade that looks very marginal, but that skill set from that player is underutilized on another team and fits very well with what we need to do. That's the new NBA. How are you optimizing the ROI on talent under aprons? And yes, baseball is not like basketball, right? But there are a lot of things you can do to optimize within a hard salary cap. And I just think Rob is peaked, and he's not a GM that's going to be able to make moves on the margins. It's home runs or bust, or overpaying for a player we know we need, makes a difference. And he acquires them because we got fleeced, or we have to get some aged player, right? 3 seconds for Dorian Finney-Smith with D'Lo. Wasn't atrocious because DFS was actually great for us, but backed into a corner. What happened to those 3 second-round picks? Gone. We have 1 now. Mismanagement of assets. So I hope he surprises me in the coming days. I just think he's going to fall on the excuse of, there was nothing for sale that we wanted. You can't buy a house if nothing's on sale. And, we're gonna have a big year next year. That philosophy pisses me off. And we need to hold more accountability. I want an indictment on this dude if he doesn't make a move by Thursday to help this roster. Because if this is another flame out year, that's not a good look. That's not a good look. And you're taking for granted that Luka's going to just be like, yeah, okay, another gap year. Let's see what happens in the offseason. Can you imagine if we don't strike on the players we want to strike on next offseason? And the West in general, as we start to wrap up, the West in general, it's still for the taking. OKC looks mortal. San Antonio's there. They haven't been tested in playoff basketball in a while. We're in the mix. Denver, I think, is the strongest team in the West right now. I think they're my favorites to come out of the West. But give yourself a shot. We see what Luka can do when he's in his bag and he has the right players around him. And Dallas made those 2 trades the year they went to the finals for Gafford and PJ Washington, and it made all the difference. It made all the difference. And granted, they did some stupid shit after the fact by trading Luka, but there were moves on the margins and they got to the finals. They found a way, even if it wasn't pretty. And I think if you can put together a couple more players, right, it'll marginally help our chances. And in the playoffs, you just want to get to the dance. Anything can happen. Anything can happen. We get the right matchup. Luka goes on a burner. We find something that we can expose in a team. You're right there in the mix. You're right there in the mix. We've seen what Luka's done to OKC. We saw what he did last year. And that gave me a lot of hope. We got obliterated because of our lack of depth against Minnesota. But this team, as constructed right now, will not make a deep run. This is a mediocre team. Even if Austin Reeves were to come back, yes, we get the scoring punch. The defense is still an issue. I'm holding out for a little hope that when this team does dig in, they can get stops. And if JJ can find synergy between the trio, I've been harping on this all season. If you can play just enough defense, especially, I talked in one of my last live hitters of if you have those bursts that you can extend of defense over the course of a game and raise your floor in those non-burst minutes, your offense should be elite enough to get through the crunch time stretch and pull out wins. So we'll see. Today was a big reminder of why we need Austin and why we need variation on the offensive end. But, that's not enough. And settling and saying this is a gap year, all that bullshit that the front office, Genie, Rob spew, nah. We need to hold accountability because we have too much talent at the top end of the roster for this to be a gap year. I'm not gonna hold that out. I'm not gonna buy into all that. I mean, y'all tell me if I'm wrong, but I'm not gonna buy into it. And if nothing happens this Thursday, Walter needs to have a conversation with Genie and go, hey, this is his last year because I don't trust him. If he can't get nothing done and he's shown the mismanagement he's had in assets over the years, what gives you confidence that with $55 million in cap space that he's going to get something done or mismanage those picks again? Dude is just trying to find a home run. And at the end of the day, that home run with Luka was with Nico, who was on some shit. And he got himself into a deal. Is that going to happen again? You're going to strike luck twice? We really think we're going to get Giannis? I mean, I do think, to be fair, to finish off, I do think if you were to sign and trade Austin Reeves with the 3 picks, you'll have to put some other stuff in there, the 3 picks, the swaps, and some other things. But that is a viable package, to at least get a team to, pick up the phone. Giannis would have to essentially do what AD did and say, hey, y'all can trade for me after this season. I'm going to the Lakers. So, you kind of force the Bucks' hands in just dealing with you because teams are not going to take that chance. Maybe a team will. Maybe they pull a Kawhi Leonard Toronto move and go, hey, we don't care if he leaves. We're trying to just go for a chip. Here you go. But that's the likelihood and probability of that, and to hold out for something like that versus trying to build a roster that can sustain. Because if you trade for a good player now, it doesn't mean that player can't be traded later or be aggregated in a deal. If you're pulling a value player, you could throw him in another deal. So, to wrap it up, because we've been going, we're almost at the hour mark. Like, this trade deadline is big to me in the sense of, can Rob get it done or not? And if he can't pull anything, the excuse of, well, we didn't have anything that looked good, we're not going to be able to address the needs that we knew we had in the offseason, That is an indictment. And that should be a huge red flag to Mark Walter to go, hey, Genie might be this governor, but you need to step aside. I don't want to hear from y'all. We already went through the bus drama and fired your brothers. You go stand over there. I'm going to build an organization because we're lacking in all types of departments right now. We said it, player development, inability to acquire players that constitute success in the NBA, right? Athletic, physical, wings. We don't have a starting center for the longevity or for the future, right? These are holes still. And I think it's too much for a Rob Pelinka to handle. And I think he's above his skis. He's peaked. He's not what we need for the future. But I hope he makes me eat my words. Art, you tell me, man. We'll check back again. Art, if we don't do anything, we going live again on Thursday. That's probably going to be my next live show. I might do something if we pull a trade before Thursday. So, we'll be on watch. But if we don't get anything done, it's going to be lit up in here Thursday. We going to get lit. So make sure y'all stay tapped in. We're going to be watching and monitoring this closely. We got the Brooklyn Nets. We got to finish off the road trip strong. It's a bad team. They just lost by 50+ points to the Pistons today. We'll end the road trip at 5-3, and then it gets tough. Go look at that schedule after Brooklyn if y'all haven't. That next 10 games after Brooklyn will probably decide if we're going to be a top 6 or a play-in team. It's going to be one or the other, obviously, right? And it's tough. I mean, you got a back-to-back against OKC and San Antonio in February. The schedule did not favor us. So it's going to get really interesting in Lakerland. Hopefully we see Austin Reeves against Brooklyn. But Laker fam, if y'all been in here with me, we've been going on for an hour. Again, please like this. Please like the video. If you're on YouTube, follow me on X. Make sure you subscribe to the YouTube Lakers for Lifers. Turn on the notifications and stay tapped in with me. We're building community here. I'm not an influencer or a podcaster with sources. I'm a fan like y'all. We break it down real. When we're frustrated, we want to get emotional. We're going to do that on this pod. When we're happy and euphoric and out of our skis, we'll be happy too. But the biggest thing is this is a forum for fans by fans where you can like it, hate it. You just drop a comment and debate it, even if it's R-rated, man. Like, I don't get offended by anything, man. I love the discourse. So, Art, shout out to you, Shay on the beat, for dropping your comments in the live. Stay tapped in with me, y'all. Let's see what happens at the deadline. Drop your comments on the players you want. But have a good one. Peace.